Well, first of all, let me say good afternoon to members of the media. On behalf of the Bermuda Trade Union Congress, as the first Vice President, I would like to make a statement in relationship to a statement issued by the Premier of the country on October the 11th, 2013. On July 22nd, 2013, the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, was signed in good faith by the government negotiating team on behalf of the government of Bermuda and the Bermuda Trade Union Congress. That MOU was signed in good faith, so to have the Premier of the country come out on October 11th and talk and say that the civil service job cuts are not ruled out, and also to talk about, comparing some unions' benefits with another union's benefits, recognizing that the MOU was signed in good faith and it expires on March 15, 2015, is very concerning to us as the TUC, because unless the government team came to the table and didn't have the support of the principals to do what they did with the MOU, it's kind of a bit strange that now the Premier of the country is coming out and saying that because the understanding in the MOU was that there will be no redundancies. Even though it says in the MOU that it's not the government's intention to have any redundancies, it's still a bit surprising that the Premier of the country will make a statement like he did last week. That's it. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Mr. President, how worried are you going forward that government will be forced to cut civil servants despite what they've pledged? We heard estimates from Accountant General Anthony Richardson, and backed up by Larry Birchall.
Yes.
Who said that the numbers don't add up right now unless something drastic is done. But 2016, government will be out of money. That statement alone doesn't worry you.
Well, it does, and I think what that says to the government that everyone in the country needs to get serious. We need to stop having party politics go on right now, and have the PLP and the current government, the ABA, come together in the interest of the country, and people need to come together and try to find exactly how we can save the economy. Because right now, if we continue to shed jobs the way we're shedding jobs, the government will be out of money in 2016. So it's very important that we have capital investment brought into the country, and in order to do that, we have to have capital projects done, we have to have capital investment that's going to come in there, and it's simply not going to happen because we're sitting on the heel talking about it. We have to make it happen.
Do you think they were influenced at all by the Sage Commission was doing a lot of talk about cutting the civil service?
Well, we understand that the civil servants, the Sage Commission did set up 4 subcommittees. One of those subcommittees dealt with privatization. We do know that there's quite a possibility that a recommendation may be coming from that committee that says that maybe the government size of government is too big. I think the question is that if the government does downsize, and let's just say they consider downsizing, what happens to, and let's just pick a number, what happens to the 1,000 people that you get rid of the government? Where do they go? Because certainly that's of, it should be very concerning to the country, because you already got 2,000 or 3,000 people that's unemployed, can't find a job in their own country. You're going to now put another 1,000 on top of that. What's the ripple effect from that? Because we've had this conversation before. The ripple effect is that the economy suffers. Again, because you got, right now there's 5,000 odd workers that work for government. If it's 1,000 less, that means right now they're supporting the Bermuda economy. So they're downtown, they're doing what they need to do, and if they don't have money to spend, that means that I would think more businesses downtown is also going to be in trouble. So that's the bigger picture. So we have to look at that and see how we can all come together and avoid that from happening.
With regard to the Premier's comments,
yes.
I'm always a little troubled when I come here and hear your statements addressed to us. You have sufficient stature. Have you ever sat down with the Premier, with your colleagues, to tell him how you feel about these issues?
Mr. Webb, let me say this to you, because that's about the second or third time you ask a question like that. Do you ask the same question to the government?
I would, if they said what you said, I would ask them.
But he has made that statement.
I wasn't there.
Well, I would have thought the media would have said to the Premier of the country, Mr. Premier, haven't you signed an MOU with the TUC?
I wasn't present.
Well, let me just give the media some guidance, and I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job. But maybe what you should have said to him is that if you got this MOU, how does this fall in the face of the MOU that's been signed in good faith by the two parties?
I don't know what the circumstance you.
Yes.
Is that, as I said, you have a great deal of stature in
Yes,
this community.
that's correct.
Why don't you, Mr. Brand, and all you, sit down with this man and tell him how you feel?
Well, I think the reason for the press conference today is to, I guess, for lack of a better word, our members are, and that's the members of the Bermuda Trade Union Congress, is very concerned about, what has happened today, recognizing that the MOU says that certain things were supposed to take place by September 1st, with the latter should have went to the private sector. They never went. I can tell you now that the letters finally went on Wednesday this week, 6 weeks after they were supposed to be sent. So we're glad that they have gone to the private sector. But I take your point. I think better dialogue between all parties, and to imply that we're not prepared to sit down and talk to the Premier of the country, we certainly are. But we would also like for him to reach out to us, to sit down and have a conversation with us about the way forward, so that these sort of statements that are being made by him could probably be offset by proper dialogue with the Bermuda Trade Union Congress.
Mr. Ferguson.
Look, I have brothers on my left and my right, so they can answer questions. I don't have to have, yes, let's, yes. I'm going to let Brother Kevin Grant answer this question for you.
Larry Birchall, he wrote in one column that we're going to have to cut deeper, as I just alluded to in my first question. And he said, based on his research, to avoid unemployment, someone, for example, making $100,000 as a civil servant might have to get used to getting $60,000. So my question is the TUC membership willing to take additional pay cuts if necessary? Because the Premier, in a recent interview, he told me week before last that next year is going to be tough. We're not out of the woods yet. We will have to make tough decisions. So that's my question.
I can respect what a columnist wants to put in his opinions, because that's what he writes. He writes opinions. But we have an MOU that states specifically how we were going to go about this particular agreement. Now, I think what has to be driven home now is that the public sector workers have done their part as far as taking this deduction in pay and percentage-wise. What has to happen now is that there needs to be more dialogue. As it was said by the Premier on Labor Day, there needs to be communication so these sorts of things don't happen where a press statement is made that causes certain behavior. I've said before that behavior breeds certain behavior. And in these particular times right now, what you say and how you say it is very important, especially in these very tense particular times. Our aspect has always been a collaborative effort to try and make sure these things happen. The tripartite initiative is supposed to happen tentatively around October 23rd, if I'm correct.
That's correct.
Exactly. So we're looking for more collaboration for all parties to come together, the private sector, government, and labor, so that we can find a solution to this particular situation. People can have their opinions, but we're going to be operating as we've started in these original negotiations, a collaborative effort to get this country back on its feet.
And Mr.
Trot.
If I might add something to what Brother Kevin just said, because I think that, let's look at what Mr. Birchall said. You're going to cut someone's salary from $120,000 down to $60,000. What's going to happen to the cost of living in the country? It's going to be cut by the 50% also? You see, whilst Mr. Birchall could sit out there and do these sort of things and say that, well, people should take a pay cut of 50%, the cost of living in this country is expensive. So if you're going to cut somebody's salary by 50%, I would like to think everything around, whether it's rent, whether it's food, clothing, all of that is also got to come down. Because there's no way you can attack people's wages like that without attacking the full infrastructure of the country.
And that's what we're seeing all the time.
And that means everything.
Yeah.
That's right. Across the board.
Tripartite.
And that's about the shared sacrifice, and that's about us all being in this together. Not separation. Shared sacrifice, all in it together. Because in that regard, if you start taking 50% pay cut for more of the government workers, just to reduce the government's commitment to salaries, then that's not the answer. That's the small answer. The bigger answer is that you need to find ways, as I said earlier, to grow the economy. Any further questions? One further question. Somebody needs to ask another, so I want to pass the mics to one of these other brothers.
Well, if I can say something, I just want to say that as part of the negotiations as well, I know that the negotiation teams have also are willing to engage with government for further talks as far as operating costs and things of this particular nature, so that we can always leave, well, I would say leave no stone turned over or unturned. Yeah, I don't want to leave no stone unturned, because we want to make sure that we look at all means of trying to actually cut costs, because I think that we believe that workers working are the only way that this country is going to get itself back on its feet.